Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope your week is going great and all that good stuff, following the 3 H's of the channel. And in this video, a creature left over from millions of years ago, a ghost ship, ghost lights, a camping trip that takes a very dark turn, Northern Alberta, Kentucky, and more. If this sounds like something you're interested in, definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. This is an event that happened while I was out walking around the ship. It was a pretty dark night out, and it was absolutely amazing to be outside in the middle of nowhere, with the only light being the light of the moon. I looked off into the distance while taking a big breath, and then I see something. I can't quite make it out. I asked the captain if the radar sees it. He says no, but he can see something out there too. We both concluded after a minute or so that it looked like a ship. We tried a spotlight, but it was too far out. We tried an air horn, a speaker, basically saying, "Hello, is anyone out there? Are you guys having trouble?" We hear loud clanks echoing in the distance. It's not Morse code, it's just banging incoherently. We in turn asked for Morse code, but there was more banging. No Morse code though, more incoherence. We try to keep a distance in case that this is some kind of trap. The banging stops, and now we hear what sounds like a full crew going into battle stations, which is weird because it's a 100 to 200 foot boat at most. But we are at a distance, and this could have just been echoes. We decide to get closer. After some time, we get close enough to shine a light. It's just a lost boat. It probably found its way there because a rope snapped. Upon closer inspection, it's really old, like ages old. The paint is basically stripped. There's holes everywhere. I dated it to maybe the 1900s. What's crazy is that the anchor was down, but that could have been rust. We tried the air horn again. There's no answer. We radio to the nearest port. The radio is super fuzzy, like there's a lot of interference. We got through, and they said they would come check it out. By the time we left, and they got there to check it out, the ship was gone. My mother told me this in 2020. For context, she is very devout and is a dead serious medical professional, doesn't joke around too much. When she told me this, and another story that I may talk about sometime, it scared the hell out of me. So my mom was just a kid. She was walking home from school with my Aunt Susie. They lived in a poor area of the country. There were lots of open fields and shanty houses. At some point on the walk, they noticed something way out in the field. It's getting closer. At first they think nothing of this, but upon closer inspection, it's not just their mind playing tricks on them. It's actually moving. It stops and looks at my mom and her sister. Both of them look away and begin to pick up their pace. It doesn't follow them any further, but they both agree that they shouldn't tell their parents or anything. When I asked her what it looked like, she said it was almost exactly like a scarecrow. When I asked her to elaborate, she said that's the only way she could describe it, but she said it moved and shook as it did, almost like it was struggling to stay upright, that it was jittering. It apparently didn't follow them, but it walked around the area until they got out of sight. My aunt also recounted the story when I called her and asked. They saw this scarecrow thing almost patrolling the field on a few occasions. What the hell did my family see out in the fields of Kentucky? I'm a fish and wildlife technologist for the Ministry of Environment, and this is way the hell out in Northern Alberta, Canada, far from all civilization. It's just mountains, rivers, lakes, and everything else as far as you can see. You can only get there on a bush plane that lands on water. I was out there for a 3-week excursion with no one, taking water quality samples and trapping fish for examination. I fall into this heavy, monotonous routine for a solid 2 weeks of BS boring work. I felt myself starting to get loopy because there was no internet, no one to talk to, no way to contact anybody. But the 3rd week, I remember I made a coffee. I walked to the edge of a rock ledge that overlooked a vast area of other rock ledges and ravines and rivers. I stretched and yawned, and then I noticed something. A huge, black, hairy thing, like 300 meters away, on another ledge behind a shrub. I didn't panic. I assumed that it was a black bear. After 10 seconds, I say out loud to myself, "That isn't an effing bear." It backed up into the bush. I lost sight of it. Then, it started working its way around the rock face to my direction. I could tell by the branches snapping and small trees bending. I think, oh shit. I drop my coffee. I run to the site 25 meters behind me. I grab the 12 gauge and a box of shells. I climb up this leafless tree halfway and wait. I can see it still making its way. I'm shook at this point. I see a flash of black and crouching, standing, and then some mixture of the two. I didn't want to shoot it until it got closer because my gun is only good in close proximity. All of a sudden, I hear this loud grunt and a thump. I'm curious, but scared. I yell out, "Hey, hey," followed by maybe 10 seconds of no movement and silence. Then, the air was filled with this blood-curdling yell or scream that I can only describe as sounding like an ape. I think to myself, nope. Then, it backed off in a bush and went the way it came. I stayed up in that tree for 2 hours. After I got down, I packed my stuff and I called Cessna back in for an emergency pickup. This was sent in to me by I Talk Cryptids, so I hope I can do your story justice. I'm a 16-year-old, currently living in northwest of England, and I had an encounter with a creature that was so strange that it resembled a dinosaur. The encounter happened back in December of 2019 when I was with a group of friends in the small village of Bolton-les-Sands. We all met one day in the hopes of building bushcraft shelters together, like those ones you see all over YouTube. One of my friends at the time, his name is James, said he knew a spot that was isolated and hidden, everything that we could have hoped for. So, we all agreed to follow him to this unknown location. After about 20 minutes of walking through farmers' fields and thin paths, we were met with a barbed wire metal fence, and to the left of that on a tree, there was a sign that said, "Private." Obviously, being young kids, we ignored the sign and carefully climbed over the metal fence. After we all successfully got over, we looked around for a brief minute to observe the creepy yet somewhat beautiful forest. It was so creepy that some of the trees even looked like tortured souls with faces. Maybe we were all just being paranoid, but we all got a similar feeling that we were being watched. After about 5 minutes of walking through the dense woodland, one of my friends said that he had seen movement in the distance. He pointed forward, and to all of our shock, there, in plain sight, we laid eyes on the strangest, most obscure creature we had ever seen. It looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. The best way I could describe the beast is that it looked like the raptors from the Jurassic Park movies. Every single one of us stood in panic as we watched it run into the neighboring tree line. I counted down from 5 to 1, and we all ran backwards toward the fence, climbed over it with sheer fear, as if the creature was chasing after us. We ran, with no stopping, all the way back to my house. We sat down in my living room and discussed what we had seen. We all agreed at the time that the creature looked like some sort of dinosaur. Nowadays, none of those friends believe or even take recognition of the encounter, and all put it down to being something natural, possibly a deer or something. I just don't know how they could even mistake that thing for a deer. To be honest, I'm happy I saw what I saw that day, as it led me to finally create the YouTube channel that I run today, I Talk Cryptids. Thanks for taking the time to read my encounter. So thank you to I Talk Cryptids for sending that in, and I hope I could do your story justice. This happened in my early teens. I was out on a camping trip. I remember the total amount of people to this day. 6. Everyone was having a good time. I was in charge of keeping the fire going. About every 2 hours or so, I would go and get firewood. My cousin, let's call him James, him and I go out for the next run. James keeps going on about how great this year is and such. I just keep nodding and shrugging it off. Suddenly, he goes silent. I turn to him. His face is white. And I should mention here that James never stops talking for any reason at all. It's his total coping mechanism for anything. Whether he's happy, sad, whatever, he's always talking. He always has something to say, no matter what. I follow his glance to see what he's looking at. It's a carcass of a deer. Its side is completely torn out. I tell him, just don't worry about it, man. There's gonna be a lot of wildlife out here in this area, and sometimes you're bound to see the stuff like this, no matter how gross it is. I pull him away, and we keep walking. After a while, the dead deer carcass smell goes away, and James isn't bothered anymore. I credit this to there being 2 of us. But then, a faint smell of another dead deer carcass mixed with, spoiled milk fills the air. James begins gagging again. James says that he wants to go back, that we can find somewhere else to get firewood. I tell him that it's not much further to the stockpile of wood. We'll get some and we'll go, and then next time we'll go somewhere else. The smell increases, and James says that he can't go on. He stays right near the area that the trail breaks. I debate this for a second, but I keep walking. Like I said, the wood wasn't too much further, so I keep chugging up the trail, and I'm starting to see a few deer here and there, some alive, some dead. I hear yelling and screaming up ahead. I dash ahead to the noise. I see this younger kid and this large figure. The kid is screaming his face off. The figure turns to me with these cold, cold yellow eyes and just opens his mouth and walks towards me. The stench at this point was unbearable. It keeps growing until I can't stand it. I gag and vomit. The creature claws at the kid and he falls to the ground, only to try to slowly crawl away. I pick up the small cutting axe I brought with me, and in my fear, I chucked it at the creature. It hit it in the back. The thing runs off. This little kid looked to be around 8, maybe 9 at the most. I'm just stunned as to what just happened. I run to the kid and help him up. He's trembling. It turns out, after calming him down, he was camping near us, which is weird for someone this young. I take him with me. Then, a thought comes into my head. James. I left him down by the trail. I book it down the trail with the kid to find him there, all peachy and cheery, but when I ask him questions, nothing comes out. He seems like he's in pain, or just zoned out. The kid and I are carrying the convo back to the site. My dad asks where we've been for the past hour, and who the hell the kid is. I just look at him, and slowly shake my head. I sat down at the fire. I tell my dad everything that happened. Obviously, he is quite hesitant to believe me, but we do indeed have a kid with us. A kid that does have cuts on it. Everything happened so fast that I didn't get a super clear look or description of the thing. James, on the other hand, something must have happened, but he would never tell me. He's also not the talkative guy that he used to be. He's still him, don't worry. Just, he seems to have seen something, or had something happen to him on the trail. He's just more quiet and reserved now. Neither of us ever want to go camping in any kind of woods ever again. And as for the kid, well, his parents were indeed camping somewhat nearby, but it seems that the kid was hearing noises in the trees and followed it to see what it was, and then he got turned around and lost, and ended up just happened to be where our stockpile of wood was. We were all very lucky to make it out of whatever happened. That's the first and only time I saw that figure, and I never did recover my axe. So I'm not that good at stories, but I have one if anyone's interested. I was living in this really crappy Midwest town, super small, maybe less than 500 people. I was an only child. My parents moved out there because it was cheap as hell. They tried to make it sound like they were making some savvy business decision to move there, but later on I found out that it was basically because we were poor. I was there during my high school years, and there was absolutely nothing to do but drink and occasionally get some shitty weed. The nearest Walmart was an hour away. You get the idea. I had a small group of friends that accepted me pretty fast, so that was a plus. We would just drink beer and drive around dirt roads and make fires in the woods and stuff. My best friend at the time, Cooter, which is just a nickname that I still find absolutely hilarious, was one of the coolest dudes you could ever meet. He was pretty much the only normal person in that town, and he once told me how happy he was that I had moved there because he felt very alone with the weirdos before me. Most of the other people that I met there were people who didn't get out enough, and that just made them weird over the years. There was one dude named Douglas who was the weirdo that even the weirdos thought was screwed up. This guy was like 40 and just spent all of his time walking around and talking into his Zippo lighter. And when I say walking around, I mean walking everywhere. You would see him on random dirt roads, cutting through yards, walking through fields. He'll come up to you in the woods, you name it. And the whole time, he's looking straight ahead, whispering to himself. Anyway, the main part of this story isn't about him exactly. The main part is about this really crappy road that people call Jethro's Gully. The road didn't really have a name, but the area was called Jethro's Gully, and people would just say, "Let's cut through Jethro's Gully." Did you figure I could say it more times in a sentence? So, we just called the road that. Anyway, I don't know why it was called that, and I never found out, but it was kind of a screwed up spot that only teenagers would go through. The reason people didn't go through there is because it's not maintained at all, and at some point, they laid down a better road that just goes around the whole area. Also, 17 people died on that road because of how crappy it is. Basically, it goes down a hill, and then at the bottom, there's a sharp turn, almost 90 degrees, with a creek right next by. I guess that's the gully. And like I said, over the years, a lot of people died in that spot because it can get slick after the rain. They even put up guardrails at some point, but people hit it so many times, and they don't even maintain it. So everyone just uses the other road, like I said. Douglas, the guy who talks into his lighter, had an accident there, and his brother died in the accident. Douglas was never the same after this. You might be asking, what's the point of all this? I'm getting there. Calm down. If this town had one claim to fame, at the very least, locally, it would be Jethro's Gully. Not just because of the accidents, but because of the orange light out there. You see, right on the corner, you can see this orange light out in the field, and when you drive up there at night, you see the light out there, and it looks like a farmhouse window. But guess what? There's nothing over there. As soon as you turn the corner and keep driving, the light disappears. So naturally, people speculate. Optical illusion, bad lighting, and all that. So one night in the fall, Cooter and I were drinking a couple beers driving around. We wound up at the spot. I had been living in that town for only a little while compared to most at that point, and I was still curious about the orange light. To most people, it was just something that they cock their heads and go, "Oh, would you look at that?" and then move on with their day. But I wanted to figure out, once and for all, what was causing it. So, like I said, Cooter and I had a couple, and we ended up at Jethro's Gully by the turn. We get out and continue drinking our beers, and we can see that this thing is out there in the field, and I swear it looks almost exactly like a window. I tell Cooter, let's go over there and see what it is. He says that it's an optical illusion and that there's nothing over there. I say, yeah, but what's causing it? He says let's do it. We climb down into the ditch and start crossing the creek into the field, and it's really dark out too, so we're just guessing as to where we're stepping. We're keeping an eye on the light the whole time and just walking toward it. The farm fields look kinda smooth from the road, but trust me, they aren't. We keep walking and talking along the way, coming up with theories about what it is and all that. Once we are about halfway through the field, I start seeing some definition in the light. Again, I swear it looks like a window with this little wooden cross in the middle, and on the sides It almost looks like curtains. Cooter says that he doesn't see it. It's just a blob of light to him. We keep getting closer, and to my dismay, the light begins to dim. We keep getting closer, and it keeps getting dimmer, closer and dimmer and dimmer. Finally, we are right where we had seen it, and it's gone. We're a little taken back by this, saddened, but we start to head back to the car after that. Once we get there, we see Douglas is standing by the car looking at us. He says, "Did you see them?" Cooter and I are looking at each other. He says again, "That's where they all are, over at that farmhouse, but we can't get to them." We say, "No, we didn't really see anything." We ask him if he needs a ride or anything. No. He just keeps walking down the road. Cooter and I get in the car and drive back to town, talking about the light and what Douglas was saying. It was a pretty surreal experience. I moved away since, and I haven't been back in many years. I still don't really know what the light is, what the farmhouse is, or anything of that sort. So, what did you think of those? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description, as well as a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to contribute to the channel that way. And if you email, I'll try to get back to you. And with that, I will keep you no longer, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching, and if you're new to the channel, or want to watch a different video that you've already seen, I'll put a couple up here, and somewheres on the screen. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.